My topics for the English conventions tutorial are oxymorons and paradoxes. I'll be going over what they are, showing you guys examples of the two, showing you how to use them in a text, the difference between the two, basically all you've got to know about oxymorons and paradoxes. Let's start off with oxymorons. They are a figure of speech in which contradictory terms appear in conjunction. It's basically two opposite words used one after the other. Now here's some examples for you guys. There's a lot, I'll leave you guys some time to read them off, but there's stuff like small crowd, deafening silence, awfully good, almost exactly, bittersweet, and crash landing. You'll notice that all these words are opposites of each other. We all know that awfully means something like really, really bad or absolutely disgusting, and that good means something, well, good, tasty, or nice, or fun. But when we use them together, technically they don't make sense, but everyone knows what awfully good means. Now on to the why. Why do we use oxymorons? Well, they help add a dramatic effect to whatever text or sentence you're writing, they support that tone, and sometimes we use them by accident, just because they're common sentences or words that we say in real life. Basically, they just make things more interesting. Now, how do we use them in a text, and where? Well, first you'll have to create your oxymoron. Start by choosing a characteristic or a way to describe your subject. So say your dad's cooking is delicious. Then you'll have to find an antonym of that word, so an opposite. So let's say you chose delicious for your first word, an opposite of delicious would be awful. Last things last, you put those two words together and then into your sentence. So you'd end up with something looking like awfully delicious. Then you're ready to add it into your sentence. Use it just like you would a regular old adjective, because that's what it is, a fancy adjective. Now for some famous usage of oxymorons. In stanza 4 of Robert Louis Stevenson's Wintertime, he uses the oxymoron, "The cold wind burns my face." Shakespeare is also pretty well known for using oxymorons. Now on to the second topic up for discussion, paradoxes. A paradox is a self-contradictory statement or a question unanswerable by following common logic. So it's the sentence or a scenario that doesn't technically make sense but still has a meaning. It's a bit harder to explain examples of paradoxes because they're quite an abstract way of writing. It's quite easy to look things up to find yourself longer paradox to kind of think over, and you can Google those last two, the Catch-22 Eucerianus bombing mission paradox, or Russell's paradox, which is also the same thing as the Berber paradox. We create and use paradoxes in text to provoke thoughts, stop the reader, and make them think a little bit more. There's also different types of paradoxes. For example, the first one called self-reference, which means a sentence or statement that talks or refers to itself. The second type of paradox is a contradiction, which means a statement or a sentence that contradicts itself. It basically just means a sentence that says that it is wrong. The last type of paradox is called infinite regress, which means just an infinite loop of contradictions that never ever ends, like the following sentence is true, the previous sentence is false. That doesn't make sense. Now, how do we use them in a text? This one's a bit more complicated. Some short, meaningful paradoxes, like less is more, the beginning of the end, there's only one rule, there are no rules, can be used pretty much anywhere in a text where we discuss their meaning. Some longer multi-sentence paradoxes, like the example I used for infinite regress, aren't meant to be put in the text, they're just meant to be read on their own. And then you've also got really long story-like scenarios, like the potato paradox or the Barber paradox, that aren't meant to be put in a text at all, just read on their own. For some famous usage, we'll be talking about the Fermi paradox. This isn't really famous usage, it's more just famous paradoxes. One day, Enrico Fermi was talking to a bunch of his little physicist buddies, and they came up with this weird paradox, which was then named the Fermi paradox. Since then, a bunch of theorists and other physicists have tried to come up with theories about the unknown and aliens and other planets and other sources of life to try and solve the paradox. Now, what's the difference between these two figures of speech? Well, oxymorons are short expressions we use to dramatize a situation, made up by two opposite words. Paradoxes are nonsensical quips we use to showcase a meaning, kind of like a short fable. Some longer, story-like scenarios are just meant to make you think a lot, and they may or may not have an answer. So the real resemblance is that on their own they don't make sense, but when you put them in a text or a sentence, they give it a deeper meaning. I think that just about covers it for oxymorons and paradoxes. Thanks a lot for watching this tutorial, and I hope it helps you out.